In the wake of the Great War, a battered and bloody Europe yearns for peace, but none is to be had in the newly independent Poland as Soviet Russia invades with the quest of squashing that independence and placing the fledgling nation under Bolshevik control. That is the premise of the new war game from Phalanx Games, 1920 Nest of Eagles. What's inside this box? I have not a clue, but you and I are going to find out together as I take a first look right after this. Happy holidays, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I jump into today's first look, I do want to mention if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as Wargame Vault, and to do so, simply visit thegaminggang.com, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal or become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you'll find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. My wargaming week continues as today we are going to take a first look at 1920 Nest of Eagles from Phalanx Games. The game is for 2 to 3 players, ages 14 and up, plays in around 90 to 720 minutes. Yes, you did hear that correctly. Does carry an MSRP of 55 euros. Of course, that means the MSRP in US dollars is going to vary based on the current exchange rate. Now, having said that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got 1920 Nest of Eagles. I do want to mention this is an unboxing. This is a first look video. I do not know really anything about this war game outside of it tackling the Polish-Russian War of 1920. So just letting you know, if you are looking for a review or a publisher's overview, this is not that video. Now, of course, if you're curious what you're going to find inside 1920 Nest of Eagles, well, kick back, put your feet up, because you and I are going to find out together. Now, of course, the fine folks over at Phalanx Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this first look with you. It's important you know that. All right, let's get the shrink wrap off here, and then we will take a look at the back. This game is presented in English and Polish, as far as I understand. In fact, right there, we've got the Polish information. Can you pull another miracle on the Vistula, or will you succumb to the Red Army? In the wake of the Great War, the fate of Central Europe and Poland hangs in the balance. The Poles fight to preserve their newly regained independence, the Soviets to quash it once and for all. This is your chance to reshape European history. 1920 Nest of Eagles is a hex and counter strategic level war game for 2 to 3 players, covering key military operations of the Polish-Soviet War. Maneuver your armies across huge territories, gain the upper hand in morale advantage by using innovative lines of friction and reactive movement, and face the unique strategic challenges in 3 different theaters of war. All right. Gotta say, this box is pretty heavy, and it feels like it's packed to the brim. And it is. So we've got, I guess, scenario book? Yep, scenario book. This is in Polish. That is English. Here's our English rule book. Polish rule book. Put that off to the side. We've got counter sheets. So let's start off with the rule book. Let's take a peek at the rule book first. Looks pretty hefty. Well, it's 36 pages. Actually, the paper stock is pretty thick. 1920 Nest of Eagles is a strategic board game covering the 6 critical months of the Polish-Soviet War, 1919 to 1921. Players take on the roles of overall military commanders of both sides of the conflict and their allies. One player controls the Polish forces fighting to save the independence of their newly reinstated country and secure its new borders. The other Soviet forces trying to vanquish Poland and spread communism to Western Europe by force. As commanders, players control and move counters representing military units, typically divisions and brigades, to achieve specific objectives or, more importantly, gain the morale advantage. Just going to break down our components, talking about our board. Did look like it's a pretty good sized board. Our terrain, map boundaries, the theaters. So we have the Polish theater in the west, the Lithuanian and Belarusian theater in the northeast, and the Ukrainian theater in the southeast. And this is showing how those are broken down. Soviet fronts and their limits of cooperation. How do we see the breakdown of our regular units? So we've got a colored band. We have strength points. Does it have elite status? If so, it looks like it gets a star. We have a lines of friction, name, movement points, reorganization, capability, and size. Okay. Unit strength and step losses. So it says a unit may have 3 possible strength levels called steps. A 3-step unit can either be full, reduced, or remnant. 2-step unit can either be full or reduced, and a 1-step unit can only be full. Reduced units have a striped background on their reverse. All right, we've got support units. Take a guess, probably aircraft and armor. Well, yep, here we go. So we've got armored trains, armored cars, artillery, tanks, and aircraft. The ability of our support units. Lines of friction. Most units generate lines of friction, LOF. A unit's LOF is a hex side shared by 2 hexes adjacent to the unit's hex. It affects spending movement points, rail transport requirements, retreat losses, attack if the enemy unit is encircled, as well as supply. Talking about encirclement. Our game round. Each represents 1 week. Scenarios determine which player starts the first game round. We have phases. So we have reactive movement phase, which is optional for both players. We have a first attack phase, which is the phasing player can attack adjacent enemy units. Then we have reactive movement phase again, operational movement phase, reactive movement phase for the phasing player, a second attack for the phasing player, and a replacement phase. It's like quite a bit going on in each of the game rounds. We do have a stacking limit, 4, except for, looks like in Warsaw. And says you may not voluntarily move to have more than 4 units in a hex. There is overstacking rules as well. 2 types of movement. We have operational movement and we have reactive movement. Talking about spending our movement points. Attack restrictions due to movement. A unit moving across an enemy LOF and entering difficult terrain or crossing any river cannot attack. Discussing reactive movement. Military operations are often decided by factors such as initiative, pinning enemy units, or using reserves to exploit a success or prevent a breakthrough. The reactive movement phase represents these complicated processes. All right. As we can see, the rules have illustrations throughout, examples throughout. We've got rail transport. So attacking. We have bloody fight. If the 2d6 result is 2 or 12, the combat ends in a draw and all units remain in their hexes. Each side suffers a step loss. We have morale advantage. So we've got that second attack phase. It says it follows the same rules as the first attack phase, but it does have some changes. So attack success chance is reduced by 3 for all attacks. Some cavalry unit rules. I wonder if that second attack phase would be optional. Maybe you wouldn't want to utilize that, seeing that you're kind of getting that penalty to the attack. Here's advancing. If an attack was successful, the defenders retreated and attacking units may advance. Talking about morale advantage, this sounded kind of interesting. The successes and failures of units affect each side's capabilities, increasing or decreasing each side's morale advantage in each theater. Morale advantage is critical to achieving the victory conditions of some scenarios, including the main campaign scenario, War of 1920. So we have a morale track that we're going to keep an eye on there. We've got morale levels, shifting morale advantage. So it's telling us what we need to do as far as a successful attack. Moves at one box. Positively, a failed attack is negative. A bloody fight, no change. Eliminating an enemy remnant division, +2. Eliminating a Polish divisional brigade, +1. Looks like there's probably some complexity to this game, which is fine. I have no issue with that. We have special orders. Players can influence their unit's operations by issuing special orders. During an attack phase, the phasing player can issue a special order to their units to perform an assault or thrust, while the non-phasing player can issue a special order to perform stubborn defense or a counter attack. Got rules for supply, as well as being out of supply, reinforcements, as well as replacements. Unit reorganization. So it says the Polish player may reorganize units on the board with the reorganization capability by merging 2 brigades stacked together into 1 division or splitting 1 division into 2 brigades. We also have special units for the Polish. Good old Cossacks. Then we have the Soviet special units. Lithuania. We have 3-player games. 1920 Nest of Eagles can be played with 3 players. One of the players commands Polish units. The other 2 command Soviet units, each one of the 2 Soviet fronts. We got some optional rules. Concealment, forced march, morale boost, alternative reinforcements, political priorities. Well, then we get into some design notes. Wonder if we'll get an example of play in our scenario book. Let's see. So here are our scenarios. Smolensk Gate. We have the Kiev Expedition. Looks like this is probably our introductory scenario here. It looks like it's 4 rounds. Yep, it says 4 rounds. Banner of Revolution, that's for 2 or 3 players. Actually, quite a few of these scenarios can be played with 2 or 3 players. Nice. And then, of course, the full game, War of 1920. So there are 9 scenarios in total. There we go. Here's our example of play. Some setup, reactive movements, first attack, the second reactive movement phase, operational movement, the second attack phase, another reactive movement phase, and then our replacement phase. And it talks about the Soviet player's turn. And we get a history of the Polish-Soviet War. Sweet. All right, let's take a look at some of the counter sheets. These look to be informational, dual-sided. Then we've got our units. Interesting that we have these shaped in hexagonal shapes rather than squares. It's a little bit different. They do look to be about our traditional size, about 1/2 inch or so. So these are the reduced sides, it looks like. And then we've got this. So all in all, not a ton of unit counters. That's interesting. Then it looks like we have cards for each of the scenarios. How about that? Look, they got rounded edges too. So here's our setup for scenario 1 and scenario 2. Nice cardstock on these too. Very nice. So this is scenario 3 and 9, because they both begin in 1920. And these are dual-sided. And it looks as if we have, yeah, we have different. Okay, so this is scenario 5. So we do have different starting locations. It looks as if. Okay. All right. Player aid charts in English and Polish. Well, this is our terrain and one of our scenarios there. These are the player aids, English and Polish. Really impressed by the cardstock on these. These will hold up really nicely. All right. And then we have got our game board. Couple of 6-sided dice. Got baggies for our counters, as well as an insert. Let's see. Looks like this might be a pretty good size board. And it is dual-sided. One side obviously is going to be in English. The other side in Polish would be my guess. So, yep. So this is our Polish side. And as far as the cardstock of the board, very nice. Nice and crisp. I know that's kind of an odd word for me to use, but not a lot of play in that. I like the terrain. The map looks cool. So we've got this like replacement pool available to rebuild in reserves for Soviet Russia. It's like all of this is Soviet Russia here on this side. And then on the other side, we have the Poles. Attacker strength, defender strength. We've got a round track over here. Trying to give you a look at all of this. So there is the round track. There's our map key. This is very nice. And it's a topic that we really have not seen a lot of war games about. I know we had the Academy Games board game. I don't know if it was part of their Conflict of Heroes lineup or not. I don't think it was. But I know we had the Polish Soviet War for that. And like I said, I don't think this is a topic that has been gamed a whole lot. All right. So we've got our dice, we got our baggies, we have our mounted board, we've got our various different scenario cards. Really like those. Those are very cool. We have got our counter sheets. We have our Polish language scenario and rule book, as well as our English language scenario and rule book. And that is what we find inside 1920 Nest of Eagles from Phalanx Games. As I mentioned, the game is for 2 to 3 players, ages 14 and up, plays in around 90 to 720 minutes. It does carry an MSRP of 55 euros. And hopefully, maybe at some point in the future, I'll have an opportunity to get this to the table with either Elliot or Cameron. So maybe I can get a review out to you. Fingers crossed on that. All right. That is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this first look, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central right here on YouTube. Of course, when you're not watching videos on YouTube, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, happy holidays, everyone. I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you for watching. And until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.